Welcome back to Hidden Equity, the podcast where we are always trying to discover where you can strengthen your weaknesses. Today we have Mathew Krinzman on. He is a longtime real estate agent, a OG Miami boy, here to discuss real estate, how it's changed in Miami, and just how Miami has changed in general, because I feel like there are a lot of locals here, but Mathew likes to give a good, honest perspective about that. And that's actually what I really like, is he doesn't sugarcoat anything.
Yeah.
So we're going to hear all about that. We're also going to talk about social media. He has a podcast, and he has really interesting guests on. And after you listen to a few, you realize how well connected he is and how he brings different topics into your life that you kind of didn't know you needed. So thank you for being here. And I'm excited to hear anything and everything. And you want to open up with a little bit about you that I skipped?
Sure. Yeah, no. I think, well, the OG part is definitely true. Yes, my name is Mathew Krinzman. I am a OG Miami native. Grew up in South Florida. Grew up in Miami-Dade County. Actually, when it was called Dade County. I grew up in a place called Sunny Isles Beach, which is very world famous now. But when I was growing up, it wasn't even its own city. All we had was a beach and some motels and a rascal house. And I used to make the joke that I single-handedly was keeping the average age just below death, back then because everyone, it was just a retirement area. That's all it was. Snowbirds and retirees. And I was an anomaly basically where I lived. There was maybe a few kids, but the kids were mostly in North Miami Beach, Bay Harbor, Surfside, Miami Beach, but there were no kids in Sunny Isles. And anyone knows what Sunny Isles is today. There's a school that's overcrowded at this point, public school wise. So that's a testament to the growth and how it became a city and what's gone on there. As you've learned since your time being in South Florida, Sunny Isles, they try to brand it as the Riviera of America because of all the massive high-end super luxury buildings that have been built. Look, when I was growing up, it was motels, and it was a fun place to grow up. My brothers will tell me that they had more fun when they were growing up here because it was less crowded. They had a little bit more freedom. And, as 70s and 80s grow, the city starts growing. Miami starts growing. And it was a fun place growing up. That's for sure. As far as how the place has changed, Sunny Isles, I think, is a microcosm of how South Florida, Miami has changed and how it's boomed. Growing up, we would always joke that every commercial on TV was, they would say at the end, 20 minutes from wherever you are in South Florida, which at that time was very true. You could get anywhere in 20 minutes. Now it's in maybe 20 days.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say 20 minutes doesn't get you very far now.
No, it only gets me out of Aventura at this point. But, it's just amazing how much it has grown, and we've gone through, South Florida in particular has gone through booms and bust cycles throughout its history. And, the 80s were definitely, there was a boom because it was the Cocaine Cowboys helped fuel it at that time. And that's all true. I remember
Was it scary at that time? Did you know?
I wasn't scared.
Can I say, how old were you at that time? Were you aware of what was going on and throughout the city?
Yeah, I was a kid. Yeah, no, I was a kid. We knew it. Look, we had at Miami, South Florida had a reputation for being a violent place because of the drug trade and the drug trafficking that was going on. But you never noticed it. Growing up, I never felt it. It was, you knew it, and I'm sure we just from people that and you grew up, everyone had someone in their life, that was in that business somehow, some way. And where I grew up on the Intercoastal, we were next to what's called Thunderboat Alley, which is where all the power boats were being built for the drug trade, the cigarettes and the scarabs and and anyone who knows about boating, those were super boats. Those were the fastest boats, and they still are to this day. But at night, where we lived, you'd hear the rumble of the boats coming through the Intercoastal with their lights off, and you knew what was going on. It was the drug, it was the traffickers, and that was how it was. And look, it fueled Miami. It helped build a lot of what we saw as far as the condo boom then, especially in the Brickell Avenue area. And we had a lot of influx of South Americans. And also, let's not forget, when the Cubans came over from Cuba because of Castro, that helped also build up the city and help explode the area and bring more I guess, business, more entrepreneurship, and more people to the neighborhood, obviously. But the 80s fueled that. And then we had a bust. Then you were kind of like a slow cycle. Hurricane Andrew, barreled through South Dade and destroyed everything in its path. And then they had to rebuild. But I remember, I got out of college in 1992, and then I kind of floated around, did some other jobs. I thought I'd go to law school, but I didn't, and my brothers kind of talked me out of it. And I didn't know, and the truth of the matter is I didn't know what to write for my essay, because there was like, back then it's like, why do you want to be a lawyer? Oh, because I, love law and I want to help people. No, because my mother wants me to get a profession. That's why. She wants me to, that wouldn't have worked. So I decided to go into real estate sales in 1997. And that's a long time. I was 25 years old at the time.
Yeah.
To start. And, everyone growing up here is in the business. All my friends somehow were in the business. They're in the real estate. Their families. My father was in it. My brothers are real estate attorneys. Everyone, that's really what built Florida. Florida and South Florida in particular is real estate development and sales. So I remember someone told me, sell something that people need. No one needs life insurance. No one needs a car, but everyone needs food, shelter, and work. So be involved in one of those. So I figured I'll go to shelter, and it was fun. I went to South Beach right away because that's what I knew. I wanted to be in South Beach, and South Beach was awesome back then. It was where all the clubs were. And that's where we went out, and I started doing rentals, and the rentals were like $500 a month studio apartments in South Beach, which do not exist any longer, but it's amazing. And you were making money, and it's like the idea was, okay, you're getting revenue, you're making income. I have money to do things, go out, which was very important when in my 20s,
Of course.
At the time. And, and from there, it grew into those who were renting ended up eventually buying, and they're referring business. And look, I've been at this now since 1990s, ended really 97. Now it's 2025. It's a long time. You can tell by the gray of my beard. But
at the same time, that's a testament to your follow-up. And part of it is like when you grow up somewhere, you can just go to dinner, run into somebody and 100%. Now you're top of mind again. It's very different when you work where you've grown up, especially if you sell real estate. Yeah. So like it's probably a little bit of both. You're from here, so you have a really good handle on your network on top of the fact that I'm guessing you're a good follow-up businessman, or else you wouldn't have a business that you do.
Yeah, it definitely goes into part of it. And so, now, I'm young in the business, and then, the 90s the 90s was pretty stable. It wasn't any great big shifts. And then the 2000s come on, and we have the big shift, obviously, because then you have those free-flowing mortgages, and you only had to basically, the basic criteria was, I don't even know if you had to be breathing at that time. Everyone was getting a loan, and there was a lot of, obviously, the fraud came in, and then we had the bust. And that was an interesting time to be in the business, because you're going from 2000, you're doing well up to 2007, really the end of 2007, 2008, and the bust happens, and it basically stopped. The music stopped, and and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And again, knowing people and having people who have money available, cash on hand to start investing, that was one of the greatest opportunities we'll ever see in our lives. If you're in real estate, when you could buy homes for $50,000, $80,000. I mean, whatever it was.
Just was the cost at that point.
And you just were sending in offers all day long to these REO companies, and they had like 40 to go through, and you were just hoping to pick yours. And I remember, I said to one investor at the time, I said, I think we offered like $60,000 on the property, and he said, and I come back, and they said, look, they want 65. And he's like, oh, they want 65. Don't negotiate 60. Don't negotiate the 5,000. I was like, come on. When was the last time you ever bought a home for that? I mean, these were not bad neighborhoods. These were in areas, that were, you fix them up, and then you rent them out at that time for $1,300 a month. As an investor, you're making money. And then again, you make money on the buy. That's how you do it. And we had that bust. We had a lot of development, a lot of new buildings that needed to be filled up, and eventually they got filled up. And that's a testament to South Florida, I think, in particular, is that we really came back pretty quick at that point. By 2012, we were pretty much on firm footing. as far as most of the areas, especially Miami Beach. There's always something. Beachfront always sells first and always will gain appreciation and come back the quickest, I believe, because people want to be on the beach. They want to be next to the ocean. That's a big selling point. And now here we are, since the really been on an upswing all the way through since 2012 up to now. I mean, now we're a little bit of a downturn, but I would say the last 5 years, especially with COVID, all the people that came in, the wealth influx really helped. And now you see it, especially what they're building, like where you live in Edgewater and Brickell and all around, and especially Sunny Isles, these super luxury buildings. I mean, there's wealth coming in. That's a big difference I noticed this time around. It's real money. It's not the fake poser money, as we used to call it. These are real people who can actually really afford the Ferrari, don't have to rent it. They can afford the Lamborghini, they can afford the Rolls Royce, or they don't need to. They can just drive around in a regular car and they're happy. They have money, and you see it. You see what's going on. The wealth is unbelievable, especially from Miami to Palm Beach. The numbers that are transacting are incredible. Homes selling for $100 million. I never thought I would see that day. I remember selling one of the most expensive. I think that one of the first homes I ever sold was in Sunset Island. And, at that time it was $800,000. This is 1998 on the water. Now that house is what, at a very minimum, $15 million. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
For sure.
It's unbelievable, how much things are appreciated. And now look, we're definitely in a different market. I will not say we are in a crash by any stretch of the imagination, because I don't want to, the people who are getting the clicks on YouTube or Instagram calling that the world is ending and the sky is falling in Florida as far as real estate. I don't see it. I see it's more of a stabilization, maybe a little bit of a reset, especially in the condo market. But, you're still seeing, you see it, the transactions on some of these super luxury homes that are going, they're still $40, $50 million. Like, it's nothing. And again, it's just real money is here now. And that's what I think is the paradigm shift of Florida and South Florida in particular.
Wow. Yeah. That's a lot of years to be here. And when you had the first crash, you already had 20 years.
No,
under your
10
belt.
years,
10
yeah.
years under your belt. So that's a very solid, substantial foundation that you were already working off of. And then you had to take everything you knew and pivot to make sure that you could still have an income. And that probably just taught you a whole new set of skills that maybe inside you were shaking in your boots, but the truth is,
it was a nervous time.
Yeah, it was a nervous
definitely
time.
a nervous time, because you saw, a lot of people left the business, which is fine. There's always a shakeout when we have these type of things, that separates the chaff from the wheat, as they say, and the true professionals will last out and stay. And look, I wasn't, the income was there. At least I was making income. I was able to support myself and pay the bills, and it was tough. But I think, knowing people who have the ability to see the opportunity that was presenting itself at that time to capitalize on it, that was the key. Having those people, understand, the people in your age myself in the Rolodex who understand the opportunities that were there. And there are opportunities now too. You just have to be a little bit more selective, and you really got to dig a little bit more.
Correct. So what is your favorite thing your favorite change that you've seen throughout Miami? It does not have to be real estate related.
Huh. That's a good question. I mean, look, everyone's like, "Oh, you're an old head, right? Oh, because you like the old ways." Look, I do miss the olden days. Like the olden days. Which is not which in the scheme of Florida is really not that long. It's only 5 years. There was something about that when it was a smaller place, in some ways, but now it's a big place. So I appreciate how it's become cosmopolitan. It's truly become a cosmopolitan area and city. So that's what I definitely appreciate what's happened. But my favorite thing I would say is, wow, it's a really tough question. It's really seeing all the development. I love seeing the buildings. I love seeing those big, beautiful buildings being built, and it's interesting, and to understand what's going on and be able to look back my whole life and say, oh, well, this is what it was like. Now I see, like, wow, we really have arrived as a place to be.
And the skyline continues to change.
That's the one thing. The sky. I mean, I've been going through pictures of old pictures that I have from where I lived, when I was growing up, because I always would take pictures of our view. The view was amazing. And then I'm kind of looking at, and then the photos kind of fade a little bit, but you're looking at the skyline, it's unrecognizable. The tallest building in Miami at that time was maybe Biscayne Tower, which was in downtown Miami. That's 40 stories. Now we're talking about buildings going to be 8. You got Panorama at 80 and Dolce Gabbana.
Waldorf Astoria is 100. Yeah.
And the Dolce Gabbana is going to be, I think, around 80. I should know that. One Sotheby's is selling that. Sorry if anyone's watching One Sotheby's. I didn't know the exact number of floors. But, then you hear Mondrian and, I'm sorry, the Mandarin Oriental in Brickell Key, the height on that. And then it's just incredible, absolutely incredible. When you were thinking 20 stories, oh my God, growing up, wow, you live in the 20th floor. Wow, what's that like? Now you're you live on the 80th floor? What's that like?
Ooh, I know.
If you're scared of heights, it's not for you, but I love the heights. The higher, the better.
Right. And don't you really notice, once you get to a certain height, the view doesn't change a ton. I just had showings at a building and there was one on the 45th floor and one on the 54th floor.
Definitely doesn't. Yeah, it's minimal.
It really doesn't change. But if you're 17 to 35, that changes drastically. So I can't imagine what floor 80 is going to feel like.
The perspective of the world is completely different at that point.
You are invincible up there.
Yeah, God bless. I hope the waiting for the elevator is not going to be that long.
Dude, that was number one when I got to my building. I was on the 41st floor, and when it's busy times, no matter how many elevators there are, it is a long wait, a long ride down. If you forget something, you're going back up. You know what I'm talking about.
No, I do, and plus also where your car is parked. Also what floor your car is parked is also a big factor. Interestingly enough, a bunch of years ago, we had a buyer cancel the deal that I was working with. It was at Quantum on the Bay over by Margaret Pace Park. And, there they had their parking structures forever. It takes forever to get in and it takes forever to get out. And I remember we went to contract, and then for some reason, we were in their inspection period, and the buyer says, what floor is the parking spot? And that's something maybe we should have known, we should have asked earlier, but we didn't. And I probably should have thought of it as well. And I think they said it was in the 10th floor or something like that. And he looked at me and goes, I can't do this deal.
That's a number one question. And that they're a seasoned Miamian because they're asking that question. If you're new to town, you not know what you're in for. If it's valet, I guess it's a little bit different. Sure. But if you're self-park, you do want to know what floor it's on, because driving up 10 floors is a lot.
It's a lot getting in and out. Oh my God. And you said, what if you forget something?
That's the worst. Oh my gosh, that's the worst. Oh. Wow. That's funny. Okay, so let's talk about social media, because you have your podcast, and I'm curious, we kind of talked when we were on a previous episode. Mm-hmm. You said that you don't really give 100% to Instagram. You mainly, it's about your dog and it's about other things that it's an odd amalgamation of, it'll be my dog, things I just see when that's a cool picture of a snail. I don't know. Yeah, it's very photogenic, your page. It's a lot of as if you just wanted to see the world through and I put my real estate in there too. I mean, I don't rely on it just for all real estate, but I will post things that I've done or listings, and kind of, because everyone's like, oh, you gotta do it, and I'm like, okay, great, I'll do it. I like doing it. It's fun. Sometimes it's creative to come up with things and try to come up with people. Hopefully people have seen it, but if they're not, it's okay. I'm not going to cry, but I think you and I talked about this earlier, last time, is that it's kind of like a place where people can, you're working with and see who you are, get an idea of who you are and what you are. And look, I hope when people who I'm working with see it, oh, he's got a really cute dog. I do have a cute dog, but dude, not only is your dog cute, but that dog is going to connect you with people for sure.
He is. Yeah. I got to monetize him somehow.
Of course.
And, that the food is not cheap. And It's just a work. That's part of my work. Like, hey, here I am at the University of Miami football game. This is what I'm doing. Like, hey guys, this is me tailgating. If you don't want to work with me because I'm tailgating, or maybe because you're not a Canes fan, then I completely understand that. I mean,
we're okay to lose that business.
Yeah.
So how did you get your podcast started? What kind of gave you the idea? I guess, in a naive question, did you have nerves?
No, I didn't. Answer the first question, the last question. No, I didn't have. I had no nerves because we're in sales.
Were you excited to get on and talk about things, or like, I don't think you have any solo episodes.
No, I don't. No, it's always has guests. The idea is always has to bring on to someone who can provide some information or insight into something about real estate. I always try to keep it real estate centered, whatever it may be. As an attorney, I'm talking about states and probated plan, estate and probates and planning, or how to do, talking to someone about the first sales trust, which I don't know much about. I know about 1031 exchanges, but I did not know much about the first sales trust, and that use of not having to do a 1031, but do the first sales trust when you're selling your income property. And that was interesting. And then talking about loans. And so it really was like, just wanted to get people on who have something to talk about, at least as far as what they could bring as far as real estate related, and information that could be actionable for someone who's listening to it or watching it in any way. But it's fun for me. I find myself, you've joined me on one. It's a conversation for the most part. That's really what it is. And if someone gets something out of it, great. If not, I don't know what to tell you, but it's I'm not gonna it's fine. Look, I enjoy it. I think people who get something, they really they go through it and they listen to it. There's something for everyone in that, and I enjoy doing it. I enjoy talking to new people all the time. Look, like I said, we're in sales. We talk to people all the time, so why not?
You're essentially just recording a conversation that you would probably have about things that you need to know about anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you're putting it out there for the public to just kind of eavesdrop, essentially.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of eavesdropping, and they get something out of it. Like, what, that guest you had on that talked about estates and planning and trusts. That was really good. It was very good information. It actually helped me make a decision as far as what I'm going to do as far as that. Great. If you reach out to the guest I had on, and even better. But if it pushed you to do something that you were kind of not, maybe thinking about, had in the back of your head, or just was delaying, then all the power to you. I think then I did a good job, and the person who was on me did a good job of explaining and teaching someone who's watching. Yeah.
You're not going to move millions. I mean, maybe one day, but neither of us right now are moving millions of people. It's like if you find that one person who you influence their life in some positive way, you did a good deed, and what you did was valuable.
Yeah, look, we all can't be the Joe Rogan experience.
I know, right?
Yeah, maybe there is, now thinking about it, now you're like spitballing it right now. Like, oh, maybe there is a Joe Rogan experience in real estate that we need to do.
He talks about very controversial topics. And I think because most real estate agents are so worried of alienating
being controversial
group of people, they don't want to talk about those things. And
True.
I also think at the same time, if you are bold enough to bring that topic to your platform, then you will also attract people who you want to work with. So
I think you're right about that. You're going to attract the people you want to attract, right? Your tribe's going to be whoever you're like. Oh, I groove to that. I like like how he thinks or what he's saying, or whatever. But I think one thing about I really want to I try to project, at least on the podcast and whatever as well, is that we're not doing doom and gloom here. Yeah, and I know that's what sells. People love the doom and gloom. If you look on YouTube, every single is like we talked about that earlier. Chicken Little, sky's falling, real estate's come crashing. No, we're not. I will not do that, because it doesn't work. It works for them, but it doesn't work for me, because I'm generally optimistic and positive about because I've been through it. It's not that bad right now, and I don't see it's going to get bad. It's going to be, you just have to find your spots to act on what you want to do is, as far as anything really, buy, sell, whatever it is. So yeah, doom and gloom is not going to work for me on this. And that's what we're, at least the podcast will not do that. I will not do that in the podcast. That's for sure.
So the information you put out is authentic.
Yeah.
It's true. It's what people are going to get when they meet you in person, because you are yourself, even though you're the interviewer, we can still get a feeling for who you are, where you stand. And that's a little bit of, it displays and showcases who you are. So if somebody were interested in working with you, they would see your podcast and they'd be able to get to know you a little bit and understand who you're connected with while learning whatever topics they need to learn about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great strategy.
Yeah. And by the way, people, the name of the podcast is the Krinzman Property Playbook. Very original name, but it works.
Yeah, but we got your last name in there. I feel like that's huge.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Everyone, my throughout life, everyone's always called me by Mathew. It's always, obviously it's my name, but everyone goes like, Krinzman or the Krinz or Krinz, that's always been how people have referred to me. So the Krinzman Property Playbook kind of just worked out that way, because that's kind of like how the nickname, use your last name as a nickname, but that's what people would call, that's what my friends would do.
Yeah, it actually flows very nicely as well.
Well, I think we're gonna have to look. I'm gonna a little inside information on that. We're gonna have to thank ChatGPT for that one.
Oh, really?
When I was coming up for the titles, I kind of ran a bunch. I said, pick out something, give, spitballing ideas, and I was running through ideas to having a conversation, and then it's like, oh, the Krinzman Property Playbook. Okay, that sounds like a good one. I like that.
Yeah. It sounds really good, and I like it because it doesn't really pigeonhole you into just real estate. It allows for the flexibility of all the other guests that you have on your show.
Yeah, I'll talk to. I mean, if you have something interesting, although we try to be real estate centric, but if there's something interesting that's going on, at least if you're someone's plugged into the community and has something interesting going on, sure, let's talk about it. Let's promote it.
There absolutely. You go. Reach out if you want to be on Mathew's podcast.
I'll talk to you.
Show notes are below.
Yeah, exactly. I'm happy to talk to you.
Yeah, you're always looking for guests anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm very excited for the success of your podcast.
Thank you.
Your OG style of being in Miami. I mean, it is just, I just can't imagine, because, I'm from Scottsdale. So like when people meet me and I'm in Arizona, they're like, you're from here? So I know the reaction that you get.
Oh, I used to get that all the time. Now, not as much, but, maybe older, like younger. Now there's a lot more people who are from here. Growing up, I mean, I was a rarity. I was like the unicorn in the class, because most people were somewhere else. There was a few of us that were born here, but the majority was from like elsewhere. If you were from South America, New York, or other places in the United States or Europe that came to school here, like it was very rare. And my wife is also rare because she was born here as well. She's a native. But the funny thing, this one thing, it's like interesting. Like growing up, there was definitely a dividing line in the county, in Miami-Dade County. The north and the south sides of the county never really met that often, and that was interesting because I grew up I was in the northeast section on the beach side. So there was always we call it the beach and the bridges, and there really wasn't, like even growing up, I don't think my wife would have crossed paths as someone, at least in the Jewish community, if someone was like, because we all know each other somehow, some way, we're all related. But maybe I would have, maybe it was a bit of bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah. That's about it. But we've grown up, Miami, Kendall. You grew up in Sunny Isles. No one goes to Kendall. You didn't cross that. It was just too far. Everyone was like the hinterlands. Yes. Now it's like. It's not even, you don't think about it anymore. But it's like, my wife always make that joke, like, you didn't really have social activities. You really didn't socialize with people because it was just far, just like, wow.
It is far. Miami's very spread out, ironically, if you live and work in the same area, you can make your whole world this tiny little bubble, which you're very happy in. You don't really need to leave, and you don't need a car. So it's kind of
more so now.
More
More so now. Okay. Before, no. It was really because, downtown was where people went to work, and the Brickell area was where people went to work, and they left. They all went down to Kendall or North or somewhere else. And the same thing in Broward is like they went to Fort Lauderdale downtown to work, and then they went elsewhere. They went home to the suburbs, the Pembroke Pines, Plantation, Hollywood, wherever they lived. And same thing in Miami. You went to Brickell, downtown, and you went home to Coral Gables, Coconut Grove, or Kendall, or somewhere else. Which wasn't really Aventura, but North Miami Beach, things like that. That's what you did. Just now where you live and you see what's going on. People are there now 24/7. That's the big difference. That's really the big difference. I think it's like growing up downtown, closed up at 5 o'clock. Now it's all the time. And Brickell, at least where you see now all the development where Brickell Center is and Brickell City Center is, those were Deadsville growing up. You 5 o'clock, you didn't want to be there. You left. So that's really the biggest. I mean, let's think now we're talking about that's the one.
Yeah. And I have been in like networking groups and people will say, oh, where do you live? And I'll say Edgewater. And like, oh, I would never live in Edgewater. I'm
Really?
like, that is a very harsh reaction. Like, tell me why. Turns out they're from here and they're just looking at it through the lens of when they grew up and how Edgewater.
It was bad.
Exactly. And so they don't see the value in Edgewater, although it's changed in this
100%.
lifetimes, but they just don't see the value.
Look, if anybody who's watching this or listening to this, if you watch something about Mary, the movie, it was mostly filmed in the Edgewater area. And that was like where she lived is actually now Paramount Bay. So, that's what Edgewater was then. It really was edgy. It really was. Other than having those amazing views of the bay, it was not somewhere you wanted to be. So yes, I get why someone would say to you like, "Oh God, no!" But invite them over. Tell them, look, you got to be missing out.
I know it's a very funny thing, but again, if you live and work somewhere where you grew up, you kind of understand that it's hard to change. It's hard to get on board with, okay, this used to be a $500,000 neighborhood and now you're building $1 to $3 million homes. I don't see the value in that. It's really hard to change your perception of something when you had it for decades.
Yeah, because they're looking back the whole time. They're not looking forward. And the perspective is one thing, but they're able to look forward and say, or at least deal in the present, and then understand what's happening. It's an entirely different story, but I think that's a lot of people have to get over that. Those of us who are from here, we may leave. Also, a lot of them people have left the area too. But those, the older ones, I get it, I understand it, but look, that's Miami.
They're not living in that day and time anymore.
Look, Miami is that way. It's constantly changing. South Florida's constantly changing. My brother once said to me, and at the time I didn't really think of it. I didn't really pay attention to what he said, but he said, like, Miami is a place where every 30 years, they tear it down, pave it over, and rebuild. And when you first told to me, like, and this is a long time ago, I was like, whatever. What do you know? What are you talking about? Yeah, but now I'm like, shit, excuse my language. It's really true. It really is. Miami is constantly changing. That's what makes it interesting to be here.
I mean, I certainly hope that these very expensive buildings are not coming down anytime soon.
No, they're too expensive. Talk about a lot of the older ones around
It's probably going to be like 100-year cycle.
Oh my God, we should only be, as my mother would say, we should only be alive and well.
Exactly. Oh, that's so funny. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, Lauren, thank you.
I really like hearing your perspective of Miami as somebody who's still considered new here. It's really interesting to hear how it's changed and about the different areas and just a local's perspective. So thank you.
My pleasure, Lauren. Anytime. Happy to be on with you.
And everything you need to know about where to find Mathew, if you'd like to be on his podcast, that is still on the table, will be in the show notes. Thank you.
Awesome.